When my sister scheduled her wedding on the same day as our youngest sibling's graduation, something inside me snapped. I'd spent a lifetime keeping the peace in a family that revolved around the golden child. But this time, I finally said no. What happened because of this was chaotic, scary, and beautiful. I'm Alex. I'm 33, a father, and the oldest of 4 siblings. Last Friday, just after putting my toddler down for a nap and pouring my first coffee of the day, I checked the mail and saw a cream-colored envelope with gold trim. Claire's handwriting. My sister, the self-appointed queen of presentation. Inside was a save-the-date card for her upcoming wedding, complete with a moody engagement photo and a quote from Rumi about love being a bridge. I rolled my eyes. But it wasn't until I read the actual date, June 3rd, that my stomach dropped. June 3rd. That's Mia's graduation day, my youngest sister, the baby of the family. The kid I practically raised every summer when our parents decided being hands-off was a parenting style. I read the date again, thinking maybe I'd read it wrong. Nope. June 3rd. No mention of the conflict. Just Claire smiling in an ivory dress on a grassy hill next to her fiancé, James. I called my mom immediately. "Hey, I just got Claire's save the date," I said. "You realize that's the same day Mia graduates?" A pause. "Yes, we're aware," Mom said lightly, as if I'd asked about the weather. It was the only venue date they could get. "That's not true," I said, already standing up, pacing. "You can throw a wedding any day." "It doesn't have to be that day." "Well, Claire's had this vision for years," she replied. "It's a very in-demand venue. These things happen, like it was an accident." Like Claire's engagement party being held on Mia's birthday last year had just slipped her mind too. I called Claire next, straight to voicemail. I texted, "You picked Mia's graduation day. You know that, right?" 5 minutes later, "It's the only Saturday the venue had. I'm not changing it. Mia will understand." But that's the thing. I knew Mia would understand. That was the problem. She'd understand because she was used to being sidelined. I drove over to Mia's high school. She works part-time in the library after classes, stacking return books with that laser focus only a 17-year-old with big dreams and small self-worth can manage. When she saw me, she smiled like always. That sweet, quiet smile that never quite reaches her eyes anymore. "I saw the save the date," I said, not dancing around it. She gave a little shrug. "Yeah. Figures." "That's not okay, Mia." She picked at a corner of a book jacket. "It's whatever. Claire's the golden child. She always gets what she wants." My chest tightened. I wanted to scream. To fix it all right then and there. "I'm not going," I said, "to the wedding. I'll be at your graduation." She looked up, startled. "You don't have to do that." "I want to," I said, and meant it. "You only graduate once. You earned that day." She bit her lip, and for a second I saw the crack in her composure. Just a flicker. "Thanks," she said quietly. I nodded, fighting the heat rising in my chest. Claire could have picked any date, but she didn't. And no one, not Mom, not Dad, had said a word in protest. That was the moment I knew this wasn't about a wedding date. It was a pattern. And I was done pretending it wasn't real. I was 13 the first time I really noticed it. It was the summer Mia was born, and Claire, already 10 at the time, was parading around in a pink tiara our mom had picked up from the party store, declaring it Claire Day because she'd helped pick out the baby's name. No joke. There we were, just home from the hospital, a tiny, wrinkly Mia asleep in Mom's arms, and Claire was making everyone sign her handmade guest book. Even then, it wasn't cute. It was unsettling. But everyone laughed. "Let her have her moment," Mom had said. Dad had just nodded, already retreating into his usual silence when things got uncomfortable. From then on, Claire's moments kept multiplying. Her ballet recitals always ended in expensive dinners. Her report cards were plastered on the fridge, while the rest of ours were casually tossed in drawers. When Rachel got into her dream college, Claire announced she was trying out for lead in the school play, same week, of course. And when Ben won the regional science fair, Claire claimed she was thinking about becoming a doctor, and managed to hijack the whole family dinner talking about med schools she'd never even applied to. But the worst was Mia's 16th birthday. We planned this quiet backyard dinner. String lights, tacos, her closest friends. Simple, just the way she wanted. Then, 3 days before, Claire called a family meeting to announce her engagement to James. And when I say announce, I mean she handed out custom gift boxes with mini champagne bottles and bride tribe. T-shirts. Mom cried. Dad said nothing. And Mia? She disappeared halfway through the evening. I found her later in the basement, sitting on the laundry room floor with a half-eaten cupcake in her hand. I just wanted one day, she said. Just one. It stuck with me. It branded itself into my memory, right alongside all the other little cuts Claire had made over the years. So when she scheduled her wedding on Mia's graduation, I wasn't shocked, but I was furious and tired. Tired of playing cleanup crew every time Claire made a mess. Tired of smoothing things over. Tired of watching Mia shrink herself to make room for someone who never gave a damn. That night, after visiting Mia, I sat on the edge of my bed while my fiancée Nora folded laundry beside me. She did it again, I told her. Hijacked Mia's moment, just like always. Nora didn't even ask who I meant. She already knew. She'll expect everyone to show up, Nora said, and your mom will defend it like she always does. I nodded, staring at the carpet. Mia's worked so hard, and Claire doesn't even pretend to care. She acts like it's no big deal. Because she's never been told otherwise, Nora said. She's never had to care. There it was, the truth. I pulled out my phone and looked at a picture Mia had sent me last fall. Her standing next to the college counselor bulletin board, her name printed in block letters on a flyer about early admissions interviews. She looked so proud. I promised her today that I'd be there for her, but the promise didn't feel like enough. Something had to change, and I was done waiting for someone else to start. The thing about drawing a line is that once you do, people act like you're the one who started the fire. I called the family meeting for Sunday afternoon. Rachel and Ben knew something was up just from the tone of my voice. Nora baked a banana bread because she said, "We're going to need comfort carbs," and she was right. We hosted it at our place. Neutral ground. Mia was out with friends. She didn't know yet. I didn't want to give her hope until I knew the rest of them wouldn't fold the minute Claire sniffed disapproval in the air. Mom walked in first, already wearing that tight-lipped smile she saves for funerals and misunderstandings. Claire trailed behind her, dress ironed to perfection, hair glossy and curled like she was attending a photo shoot instead of a family intervention. Rachel and Ben arrived together. No fanfare, just a quiet exchange of glances when they saw Claire sitting on the couch like she owned the place. I didn't waste time. I just want to be clear, I began. I'm not going to Claire's wedding. You could hear the air leave the room. Not all at once, more like a slow leak from a tire no one wants to admit is flat. I'll be at Mia's graduation, I continued, because she deserves to have someone show up for her, and because I'm tired of pretending this kind of thing isn't a pattern. Mom blinked. Alex, let's not be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic, I said. I'm being honest. This isn't about a date. It's about every time someone else in this family has had a moment, Claire's managed to snatch it away, and we've all let it happen. Claire crossed her arms. So this is your big stand? Ruin my wedding because you feel sorry for Mia? I laughed. Couldn't help it. This isn't about pity. This is about priorities. Mia's worked her butt off for 4 years. She deserves to have her family at her graduation. She deserves not to have to split her day with a wedding that didn't have to happen on the same Saturday. I told you, Claire snapped, that was the only date available. You told me it was the only venue date available. You didn't say you even looked at other venues. You chose that date knowing it was Mia's. That's not unfortunate. That's deliberate. Mom jumped in then. Claire's wedding is a milestone, Alex. You can go to any graduation. No, Rachel cut in, voice low but firm. She gets one high school graduation. One. Claire's already had an engagement party, bridal shower, a bachelorette trip. How many events do we have to center around her before someone else gets a day? Ben cleared his throat. I'm not going to the wedding either, he said. I'll be with Mia. Claire's face crumpled, not into sadness but disbelief, like we'd just told her Santa wasn't real and the world had betrayed her. This is sabotage, she hissed. It's accountability, I replied. Long overdue. Nora reached over and took my hand under the table. Her quiet presence, steady and warm, anchored me. Claire stood. You'll regret this. But none of us moved to stop her. The door closed behind her with a softness that felt louder than any slam. And in the silence that followed, for the first time in a long time, it felt like something real had begun to shift. It started with the phone call I knew was coming. Monday night, just after I'd put our son to bed, my phone lit up with Mom. I stared at the screen for a second, considering not answering. But I did. Of course I did. Some habits die slow deaths. "Hi, Mom." A long pause. Then her voice, syrupy sweet with that passive-aggressive edge she always reserved for when she felt wronged. "Do you really want to do this, Alex? Cause a whole scene over a silly scheduling overlap?" I laughed, bitterly. Mia's graduation isn't a silly scheduling overlap, it's a major life milestone. You remember what those look like, right? "I just think you're being unfair," she said quickly. "Claire didn't mean to hurt anyone." "But she did. Again. And you're defending her." "Again. You know how much pressure she's under planning this wedding?" "Oh, come on," I snapped. "She picked the date. You think Mia didn't notice?" "She's just too used to being stepped over to say anything. You are being very aggressive right now." I could hear the shift, the classic guilt trip maneuver. She was about to go full martyr. "I raised 4 children," she continued, "and I don't deserve this kind of treatment. Can't we just come together as a family for once?" "For once?" I repeated. "Mom, I've been coming together for this family my whole life. You just never noticed unless Claire was the one in the spotlight." She went quiet then. I thought maybe she'd hang up. Instead, she changed tactics. "Do you know how embarrassing it is? Everyone's asking why you're not supporting your sister. Your aunts, your Uncle Paul, even James's family. I bet Claire told them I'm trying to ruin her big day. She's upset, Alex. She's texting everyone, trying to explain. Yeah, I bet she is." And just like that, I started getting screenshots, one after another. From cousins, from extended family members, from old friends of the family I hadn't spoken to in years, all with some variation of, "Hey, Claire said you're not coming because you hate weddings now?" She was rewriting the narrative, fast. Claire always had a talent for flipping the script. She was the star, and the rest of us were supporting characters. But this time, she'd pushed too far. And meanwhile, Mia was folding in on herself. She stopped texting back quickly, missed a FaceTime call from Nora, canceled dinner plans with Rachel, like she was disappearing again bit by bit. I walked into her room at our place that Thursday evening, just as she was pretending to study. "You okay?" She shrugged. "Yeah, Mia." Another shrug. "Just tired, I guess." "You saw the save the date again, didn't you?" She didn't answer. Just looked down at her notes, blinking fast. I sat on the bed. "You don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt." "Not with me." She finally looked at me, eyes red but still dry. "It's not that I'm surprised," she whispered. "I'm just tired of hoping." That broke something in me. Claire could spin whatever story she wanted, call whoever she liked. But I wasn't going to let her steal Mia's hope too. I squeezed Mia's hand and said, "You're not alone in this." Not anymore. Saturday afternoon, my apartment smelled like glue sticks and frosting. Rachel was cutting out paper stars while Ben tried to inflate a balloon arch without swearing in front of my son, who sat cross-legged with a bag of Skittles and a deeply concerned expression. This wasn't just a family get-together. This was rebellion. "We're really doing this," Ben muttered around the nozzle of a balloon. "Boycotting a Walsh family wedding." Nora laughed from the kitchen. "More like choosing priorities." Big difference. Rachel looked up from her craft project, a half-glued cardboard cap in her lap. "I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad at all." None of us did. Not anymore. We'd all had the same reaction once we stepped back and saw it. Claire wasn't just steamrolling Mia's graduation. She was doing what she'd always done, rewriting reality in real time, dragging our mother along with her, and leaving the rest of us to clean up. But not this time. Ben leaned back, stretching. "Remember when Claire scheduled her gender reveal on the day I proposed to Emma? And Mom acted like we were the ones being dramatic?" Rachel snorted. "You mean the brunch where she made you both cut into a cake with blue dye inside so she could practice?" Ben groaned. "Don't remind me." We all went quiet for a moment, the kind of quiet that's less about silence and more about shared history. Then Rachel clapped her hands together. "Okay. We're throwing Mia the best damn graduation party this family's ever seen." She wasn't kidding. She'd brought Pinterest boards. Ben showed us sketches of a photo booth backdrop he'd planned. Black and gold, college logos, stars with each of Mia's achievements written on them. Nora had already ordered cupcakes in Mia's favorite flavors. And me? I was in charge of the speech. "Mia's going to cry," Nora said proudly. "Good," I replied. "She deserves a cry, a happy one." Ben sipped his coffee and looked around. "You know, if Claire gets to hijack everything, Then we choose not to show up for the show this time. We nodded. This wasn't about vengeance. It wasn't about punishing Claire. It was about Mia. And for once, making sure she didn't have to play second string in someone else's drama. As the sun started setting and the room filled with half-done decorations and empty coffee cups, it hit me how different this felt. Like building something real. Like reclaiming something that had quietly been stolen over the years. Mia wasn't just going to have a graduation, she was going to have her moment, all of it. It was raining when Claire showed up. Not just drizzle, full-blown thunderclouds and angry sky kind of rain. I saw her through the front window, standing at the porch in a white trench coat like she was in some made-for-TV drama. Nora was upstairs helping Mia pack an overnight bag for a sleepover at Rachel's. The timing wasn't accidental. I think part of me knew she'd come. I opened the door before she knocked. "You got 5 minutes," I said flatly, stepping aside. Claire walked in like she owned the place. I let the silence stretch as she shook off her coat and looked around like she was taking inventory of everything I'd built without her. "You've made your point," she said finally. I raised an eyebrow. "Which one? That Mia deserves better? That we're tired of your games? Or that Mom enabling you doesn't make it right?" She flinched slightly. "Good. I didn't do this to hurt her," she said. "The date look, I told you. It's the only one we could get with that venue." I crossed my arms. "Then why didn't you talk to Mia? Why didn't you at least pretend to care?" She looked down, her voice dropping. "Because she wouldn't have believed me anyway." There it was. Not quite an admission, not quite an apology, just Claire logic. "You've made her feel invisible for years," I said. "Birthday parties, announcements, big events. You always find a way to step on her toes and then act surprised when people call you out." Claire's jaw tightened. "That's not fair. What's not fair is a 17-year-old girl crying in my guest room because she thinks her own family doesn't think she's worth showing up for." She blinked fast. "I didn't know she was crying." "Because you never ask," came a voice behind me. "Nora." She walked in from the hallway, arms crossed, eyes locked on Claire with a kind of quiet steel I've only seen when she's defending our son from playground politics. "You hurt your sister, Claire," Nora said. "And now you're blaming everyone but yourself." Claire opened her mouth, closed it again. The room fell into that heavy silence, the kind that only builds when too many words have been swallowed for too long. "I thought family was supposed to show up for each other," I said. "But all I've seen you do is demand loyalty and offer none in return." Claire looked at me then, really looked, like she was seeing me for the first time in years. Her voice was small. "So you're really not coming?" "I'm not," I said. "None of us are. We'll be at Mia's graduation." She nodded slowly. "I guess I'll have to explain that to people." "That's your choice," I said. "Just like all of this was." Claire put her coat back on. Her hand hovered at the doorknob for a moment. "I didn't think it would blow up like this," she said quietly. "It didn't blow up," I replied. "It finally came to light." And with that, she walked out into the rain. We all thought Dad would stay quiet. That he'd do what he always did. Sit in the corner with his crossword puzzle while the rest of us yelled and pretended it was conversation. But this time, he surprised everyone. It was a Friday dinner, one of those forced family bonding meals that Mom insisted on to maintain the illusion. We were at their house eating lasagna that tasted like salt and avoidance. Rachel had brought a pie. Ben was playing it cool, but I could see the tension in his jaw. Mia wasn't there. She'd flat out refused. "Tell me when they're ready to treat me like a person," she'd said. I couldn't argue. Claire hadn't spoken since the salad course. She kept picking at her food like the noodles had personally offended her. Mom, on the other hand, was in full spin control. "I just think we need to all stop overreacting," she said for the third time, stabbing her fork into a breadstick like it owed her money. "This has gone far enough. It's not like anyone's getting married every week." Rachel set her fork down carefully. "That's not the point, Mom. The point is this keeps happening. And you always act like it's no big deal." "Because it's not a big deal," Mom snapped. "It's just a date." Claire didn't know Mia would take it so personally. Ben chuckled, low and humorless. "Yeah, funny how she keeps not knowing things." Then Dad put his napkin down. Just that, one quiet motion. But it landed like a bomb. He looked around the table, his face unreadable, his voice calm in a way that made everyone stop breathing. "You don't get to pretend this isn't a pattern anymore," he said. Silence. Pure, stunned silence. Claire blinked. "Dad?" "No," he said, holding up a hand. "You don't get to interrupt this time." I felt the air shift, like someone had finally cracked open a window in a house filled with smoke. "Every time one of your siblings has something important, you find a way to make it about you," Dad continued. "And your mother defends it over and over until we're all too exhausted to argue." "Well, not anymore." Mom's face went pale. "Robert?" "I'm speaking," he said, quiet, firm, devastating. "This isn't about one wedding date. This is about years of dismissing your children's feelings. You've made them feel like background noise. And I let it happen because I didn't want to cause more tension. But that was a mistake. I should have spoken up a long time ago." Claire pushed her plate away. "So now you're taking their side?" Dad looked at her with eyes that had seen every version of us. Childhood tantrums, teenage rebellions, broken hearts, and said something I'll never forget. "I'm not taking sides. I'm telling the truth. And if that feels like betrayal to you, maybe ask yourself why." Claire stood up fast, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. She didn't say a word, just grabbed her purse and walked out. Mom sat frozen, her mouth half open. Then she turned to Dad, voice trembling. "How could you take their side over your own daughter?" And Dad, without blinking, said, "She's not the only daughter I have." For the first time in years, someone finally said it, out loud, in front of everyone. And it changed everything. I wasn't expecting a message from James. It came in on Sunday morning, just as I was sipping coffee and watching my son attempt to pour cereal with the focus of a bomb technician. My phone buzzed. "James Carter. Hey, Alex. Any chance we could talk?" "Just us. In person." I stared at it for a full minute. Claire's fiancé. The guy who always smiled too wide and talked like he was narrating a real estate commercial. I didn't dislike him. I just never knew what was real with him. Still, something about the timing, it felt different. I texted back, "Coffee shop on Main, 2 p.m. He was already there when I arrived. No suit, no polished grin. Just jeans, a hoodie, and 2 mugs of coffee sweating on the table. He stood awkwardly as I walked in, motioning to the seat across from him. "Thanks for coming," he said, voice lower. "Tired," I nodded, sitting down. "What's this about?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Claire's not thrilled. I reached out. I didn't know everything. About the graduation." I raised an eyebrow. "She didn't tell you?" "She told me it was a small conflict. That your sister's ceremony was in the morning and wouldn't interfere with the wedding. She said it wasn't a big deal." I sipped my coffee, watching him carefully. "And you believed her?" "I did," he said quickly. "Because, why wouldn't I? She said it with that kind of confidence that makes you feel crazy for questioning it." "Yeah," I muttered. "Welcome to the family." James looked genuinely uncomfortable. He took a deep breath. "She's been spinning it all week. To her friends, to my parents. Said you were making drama, that Mia didn't even care, that your whole side of the family has always resented her for being successful." I laughed out loud at that. Couldn't help it. She's been the center of every family event since she could walk. If anyone's been resentful, it's Mia, quietly, and with good reason. James looked me in the eye. "I believe you." That caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting him to pick a side, not really. "I appreciate that," I said cautiously. "I care about Claire," he added, "but I don't want to build a marriage on lies. And I don't want to walk into a family where there's a silent war nobody's allowed to talk about." I studied him, trying to gauge whether this was sincerity or just damage control. "I don't think she realizes what she's doing," he said. "I think she's so used to being the favorite that anything less feels like rejection." I nodded slowly. "That's not your fault. But if you're going to marry her, you need to understand this isn't new. This is decades old, and it's not going to fix itself with a wedding cake and a dance floor." James nodded. "I just wanted you to know I'm not blind, not anymore." We sat in silence for a bit after that, sipping our coffee. I left the cafe unsure of what this meant for Claire. But for the first time, I thought maybe James wasn't just a supporting actor in her show. Maybe he was someone who could start rewriting the script. It was a stupid photo. Or at least, it should have been. I found it while clearing out the storage bins in the guest room, making space for Mia's things, since she'd be moving in with us soon. The frame was cracked, the edges yellowed with time, but I knew the image by heart. A family picnic, maybe 10 years ago. We were all there, me, Rachel, Ben, Mia, Claire, Mom, and Dad. Claire was front and center, of course, her arms slung around Mom's shoulder like they were posing for a magazine. Mom was mid-laugh, her whole body turned toward Claire like the rest of us barely existed. The rest of us stood off to the side, barely in frame. Mia was half hidden behind a cooler. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't the only photo like that. There were dozens. Birthday parties, vacations, holidays. Always. Claire glowing like the sun, while the rest of us orbited around her. I snapped a photo of it with my phone and sent it to our sibling group chat. No caption, just the image. Rachel responded first. Wow, that says it all. Ben chimed in next. Was this the same day Claire threw a tantrum because Mia got a bigger slice of cake? I added a message beneath the picture. We've been background characters in their family fantasy. Then Mia responded. Just a crying emoji. It wrecked me. Because Mia wasn't being sarcastic. She wasn't mocking it. That single emoji said everything. The years of shrinking. The silent apology she always offered when she dared to exist in the same room as Claire. I stared at my phone for a long time after that. It wasn't just about the photo. It was about all the little things we'd ignored. The jokes at Mia's expense. The way Mom always redirected conversations back to Claire. The way we'd all, myself included, let it happen, thinking it wasn't worth the fight. But it was a fight. It always had been. Just one we were finally waking up to. Later that night, Mia knocked on my door. She looked tired, but not sad. Not quite. More like someone who's just stepped out of a long, cold shower. I don't want to be invisible anymore, she said. You won't be, I told her. Not with us. She nodded, hugging herself. I think I stopped expecting them to see me. I just didn't expect it to still hurt. I know. She glanced at the photo on the kitchen counter, the one I hadn't had the heart to toss yet. Do you think she ever meant to hurt me? I didn't answer right away. I think Claire sees herself as the main character, I said finally, and I think everyone else is just part of the set dressing. Mia nodded slowly. Then I'm done being the background. And with that, she turned and walked upstairs, her back a little straighter than before. The morning we moved Mia in, it rained again. Not dramatic thunderstorm rain, just a slow, gray drizzle that matched the mood. She didn't have much to pack. A few boxes of books, her art supplies, some clothes. The rest, like her self-worth, her trust, would take longer to unpack. I carried the last box into the guest room while Nora made tea. Mia stood in the doorway, silent for a moment, then quietly said, It's weird. I feel lighter. She didn't mean the boxes. Mom didn't call that day, neither did Claire. I didn't expect them to. The decision had been made the night before. Nora and I sat on the couch after Mia had gone to bed, and I told her I was done. Done with the group chats that excluded Mia. Done with the family dinners that turned into Claire showcases. Done pretending our mother's indifference was anything but a choice. I'm cutting contact, I said, at least until after graduation. Nora didn't flinch. She nodded. Good. You've been bleeding slowly for years. It's time to stop. And just like that, I turned off the noise. Blocked Claire's number. Muted Mom on everything. If they wanted to reach me, they'd have to do it the old-fashioned way, by realizing what they'd lost. That weekend, Dad showed up at our door. No warning, no text. Just him and a paper bag of groceries, wearing his old raincoat and that sheepish smile that always made him look like a kid caught skipping class. I figured you guys could use some extra eggs, he said. Mia opened the door. She froze when she saw him. He held up the bag like it was peace itself. And some apples, for that pie you like. Mia stepped aside, slowly. He didn't say much. Just set the groceries on the counter, ruffled her hair the way he used to when she was little, and sat at the table like he belonged there. For the first time in years, maybe he did. That became a pattern. Dad dropping by every few days, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with questions about colleges, sometimes with nothing but his presence. Quiet, constant, real. He started helping Mia with her applications, something our mom never even asked about. They'd sit side by side with laptops and highlighters, comparing deadlines and program descriptions. It felt like watching a new timeline branch out right there in our kitchen. And Mia? She started laughing again. Not the careful kind, not the polite chuckles she'd trained herself to give. Real laughter. Loud, unfiltered, belly-deep joy. We had movie nights. Nora taught her how to make her favorite curry. I found her sketchbook one morning on the coffee table, open, unfinished pages filled with bold, defiant lines. She was creating again. The silence from Mom and Claire grew louder the longer it stretched. But for once, it wasn't suffocating. It was space, room for us to rebuild. Not from the ruins of what we had, but from the truth of what we'd finally started to become. Christmas came quietly that year. No matching pajamas, no overcrowded dinner at Mom's house, no forced smiles beneath glittering garlands. Just warmth. Real, imperfect, earned warmth. We kept it simple. Just me, Nora, Mia, Ben, Rachel, and their partners. 6 adults, 1 toddler, and enough food to feed an army. We strung lights across the living room, and Mia helped our son tape hand-cut snowflakes to the windows. He called them ice stars. She didn't correct him. It was the first time I saw her relaxed on a holiday, like she wasn't holding her breath, waiting for someone to make her feel like a guest in her own family. After dinner, we gathered around the tree. Rachel passed out hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, and Ben queued up an old holiday movie. Our son, dressed like a lopsided reindeer, handed out handmade cards. They were wobbly and crayon-heavy, the kind of art that would normally be dismissed or forgotten. He gave Mia one that said, "Happy Family." She teared up reading it, and Nora wrapped an arm around her without saying a word. Then, just as the credits rolled, there was a knock at the door. Everyone paused. No one was expecting anyone. I stood and opened it to find Dad standing there holding a tiny gift box and a bottle of cider. He looked nervous. "I wasn't sure if I'd be welcome," he said softly. "You're always welcome here," I told him. "Come in." He stepped inside, his coat dripping from the snow, and handed the gift to Mia. "I found this in the attic last week. Thought it belonged with you now." Mia opened it slowly. Inside was a delicate gold necklace, thin, understated, beautiful. The pendant was a tiny set of initials. "G.W. Grandma's?" she asked, voice trembling. Dad nodded. "She gave it to your mom, who never wore it. Said it didn't suit her. But I remember her saying it was meant for the granddaughter who needed reminding she came from strong women." Mia stared at the necklace like it might disappear. Then she stood, stepped forward, and hugged him. It wasn't a polite hug. It was the kind that collapses years of distance. The kind that says, "I miss this, I missed you." Dad stayed the rest of the night. He helped our son build a Lego set and laughed when Rachel burned the second batch of cookies. At one point, I caught him watching Mia, a soft smile on his face, like he was finally seeing something he didn't know he'd lost. And me? I just watched. Let the peace settle in. We didn't talk about Mom. We didn't need to. The empty chair at the table said enough. This Christmas wasn't about who was missing. It was about who finally showed up. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday. I was at work, half listening to a conference call when my phone buzzed. "Dad?" I stepped out into the hallway, already sensing something was off. His voice was low, steady in that way people sound when they're trying hard not to unravel. I moved out. The words hit like ice down my spine. "Wait, what?" "Your mother and we've separated," he said. "I'm staying at the condo near campus for now." I leaned against the wall, trying to catch my breath. I'd thought maybe, after Christmas, things might shift. That maybe the necklace, the gesture, meant Mom was softening. But some doors don't open, some stay locked. "What happened?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "She stopped going to therapy," he said simply. "She made it through 2 sessions, said the counselor didn't understand her, that it was all just family politics." I closed my eyes. Of course she did. "Claire still thinks we're all overreacting," he continued. "She's posting about the wedding again. Has a new hashtag, surround yourself with love." That stung. Not because I cared about the caption, but because I knew exactly who she was excluding with it. "Are you okay?" I asked. A pause. Then, "I think so. I mean, it hurts. But I don't feel lost. I think I've felt lost for years. This feels like the first honest thing I've done in a long time." We stayed on the phone for another 10 minutes, mostly quiet, just 2 men trying to map a new version of family over the rubble of the old one. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, staring out the window while emails piled up. I couldn't focus. Not on marketing plans, not on revenue reports. Just the simple fact that the family I'd grown up in had finally admitted it was broken. That night I told Mia. She was silent for a long time. Then she nodded. "Good for him," she said. "He deserves better." She didn't ask about Mom. Didn't ask about Claire. She just returned to her sketchbook, like the confirmation of fracture was both tragic and oddly freeing. Because now it wasn't a question. It wasn't a quiet ache beneath every holiday, it was fact. The old structure had collapsed, and in its place, we could finally build something real. Claire kept posting, of course. Photos of wedding dresses, flower arrangements, engagement selfies with captions like, "Choose joy and drama-free zone." She never mentioned the graduation, never mentioned the family silence. She lived in a world of filters and curated captions, untouched by consequence. But I wasn't watching anymore. I'd muted her account, blocked the hashtags. I didn't need to see it. Because we were building something better, away from the noise. And for the first time, I wasn't looking back. Spring arrived like an exhale, slow and warm and long overdue. Mia was thriving. You could see it in her posture, in the way she filled a room now without trying to shrink into corners. Her laugh came quicker, her eyes brighter. The walls she'd spent years building, quiet walls, invisible ones, were coming down, one joke, one kind word, one silent, healing night at a time. Her art portfolio got accepted into a competitive college program, the kind with waiting lists and near impossible admission rates. When the acceptance letter came in the mail, she just stared at it, like it might vanish if she blinked too fast. Nora read the letter out loud while Mia sat frozen on the couch. When she reached the final line, "We are excited to welcome you to our incoming class." Mia burst into tears. "I didn't think I'd get in," she whispered. "You didn't think you'd be seen," I corrected. "But now you are." To celebrate, we planned a siblings-only trip. Just the four of us, me, Rachel, Ben, and Mia. No parents, no Claire, no pretending. We rented a little cabin in the mountains for a weekend. Nothing fancy, just trees, stars, and silence. And healing. The car ride up was full of bad playlists and worse snacks. Mia rode up front with me, feet on the dash, hair tied back with a bandana she'd painted herself. Rachel brought homemade brownies. Ben insisted on stopping at a gas station every 30 miles for road trip integrity. We talked. About everything, about nothing. There were campfires and ghost stories, and one late-night heart-to-heart where Mia said, "I used to think love was something you had to earn by being small." Rachel leaned over and hugged her. "Not anymore. You don't have to shrink for anyone." We toasted with cheap wine and mismatched mugs. Ben grilled burgers. I watched my siblings from the porch that night, laughter echoing through the trees, and felt something loosen inside me. It wasn't just Mia who was healing. It was all of us. We had spent years orbiting a broken center, trying to earn affection, dodge criticism, keep the peace. But now the center had shifted. It was us. Us showing up for each other. Us choosing peace without silence. Us choosing each other without apology. On our last morning, Mia handed me a small sketch she'd made, a picture of the four of us, standing on the porch of the cabin. It wasn't polished. It was raw, real, full of life. On the back, she'd written one sentence, "This is what family feels like." And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. It was Nora's idea to invite Claire to our daughter's birthday party. "She's reached out," Nora said gently. "Said she wants to talk." "To apologize. I think maybe we should let her." I didn't answer right away. I stared at the stack of paper crowns and half-inflated balloons on the dining table. Claire hadn't spoken to any of us in months, not since Dad moved out. Not since we stopped pretending she was the sun we were all meant to orbit. But she was still family. Complicated, messy, sharp-edged family. So we said yes. The party was small. Just a few kids, a backyard full of bubbles, and enough sugar to fuel a minor revolution. Mia helped with decorations. Ben manned the grill, and Rachel DJ'd a playlist that somehow made a 6-year-old scream with joy and made the adults dance. Then, around 3 p.m., Claire arrived. She came alone, no dramatic entrance, no curated look. Just jeans, sneakers, a simple sweater. Her hair was tied back, her eyes tired. She looked older, softer, like someone who'd stopped performing for a while and finally felt the weight of it. I met her at the gate. For a second, we just stood there, both unsure of what to say. Then she offered a small, cautious smile. "Happy birthday to the tiniest queen," she said, holding up a gift bag with tissue paper poking out the top. "She's in the sandbox," I said, "but I think she'll approve." Claire nodded, then looked around the yard. "Everyone's here." "Everyone who showed up," I replied, not unkindly. She winced. I deserve that. We didn't talk again until later, after the cake, after the presents, after my daughter ran up and hugged her legs with zero hesitation. Kids are funny that way. They read energy more honestly than most adults. Claire knelt and hugged her back, whispering something I couldn't hear. Then she stood and found me near the back steps. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded and we stepped away from the noise behind the garage. "I'm sorry," she said, just like that, no build-up, no excuses. "I was wrong, about everything." I didn't respond, not right away. "I've started therapy," she added. "Actually going, actually listening. I didn't realize how much I hurt you all, how much I hurt Mia. I thought I was just claiming space. But I was stomping on people to do it." She looked down, her voice cracked. It took losing everyone to realize I'd never been fair. There it was, the apology. Not the polished version, the real one, the hard one. I took a breath. "Let it settle. Thank you," I said. "It doesn't fix everything, but it matters." She nodded, eyes damp. We didn't hug, not yet, but we didn't walk away either, and maybe that was enough for now. We kept the boundaries in place. Claire wasn't at family dinners yet. She wasn't added back to the group chat. But she texted sometimes. Low-stakes messages like, "Happy birthday, Rachel," or "That art school looks amazing, Mia." No pressure, just signals, like she was tapping on the glass from the outside, asking if we still remembered her. When it came time to finalize the guest list for my wedding reception, Nora asked, "Do you want her there?" I hesitated. Not at the ceremony. That felt too intimate, too sacred. But the reception? That was a maybe. "We'll invite her," I said. "But she's not center stage. She comes, she respects the space, or she doesn't come at all." Claire responded to the invitation with a single line, "I'd be honored. Thank you for the chance." The reception was held in a small, sun-drenched venue with tall windows and paper lanterns. Our son ran wild between the tables, hyped up on cake and attention. Mia wore a jumpsuit that made her look like a gallery owner in New York. Rachel gave a speech that made everyone cry and then immediately laugh. Ben DJ'd and made truly terrible transitions, which somehow only made the night better. Claire arrived just before dinner. She didn't make a big entrance. No flowing gown, no dramatic hair. Just a soft dress in earth tones, flat shoes, and a posture that said, "I'm here to listen, not perform." She brought a gift, a framed sketch of our family, drawn by one of Mia's art school friends. It showed us gathered on the porch of the mountain cabin, heads thrown back in laughter, surrounded by stars. Mia opened it, her eyes going wide. "How did you?" "I reached out to your friend," Claire said, voice barely above a whisper. "I wanted to give something that wasn't about me." For the rest of the night, she stayed on the edges. She didn't make toasts. She didn't pull focus. She helped clear plates when dessert was done. I caught her once sweeping cupcake crumbs into a napkin and tucking it into her bag. Like if she left the place cleaner than she found it, she might be allowed to stay. And you know what? That mattered. Because it wasn't about grand gestures anymore. It was about small ones, earned ones. At the end of the night, as guests filtered out and the music softened, Claire found me by the dessert table. "Congratulations," she said. "Thanks," I replied, "for coming." "For everything." She nodded, then added, "I know this is just a first step." "It is," I said, "but it's in the right direction." She didn't ask for a hug. She just smiled and said, "I'll see you soon." And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. The wedding itself was nothing like Claire's Pinterest boards. No grand ballrooms, no string quartet, no dramatic vows on a cliffside. Just a quiet, sunlit garden with folding chairs, soft music, and the kind of joy that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Nora and I wanted it that way. Intimate, intentional, surrounded only by the people who had shown up for us when it mattered most. We kept the guest list tight. No mom. No extended cousins we hadn't heard from since high school. Claire wasn't invited to the ceremony, not out of malice, but because this part was sacred. Reserved for the people who'd stood in the fire with us, not just watched from the sidelines. Mia was my best person. She wore dark blue and walked me down the aisle alongside my son, who dropped petals from a tiny basket because he insisted that was his job. Nora's parents wept from the front row. Rachel officiated, weaving our story into something warm and real, while Ben stood beside us holding the rings with shaky hands and a crooked smile. When it was over, and the last line of our vows had settled into the hush of the garden, Mia stepped up to the mic. We hadn't planned a speech from her, she just moved toward it, steady and sure. "I used to think family was something you had to survive," she said, her voice clear but soft. "Like it was a storm you learned to stand in without getting wet." Everyone went still. "But I've learned that family can also be a place, a shelter, a choice, and today I see it so clearly because of you two." Nora squeezed my hand, and I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. "You chose each other. And you chose us. Again and again. That's not always how it works, so thank you for showing me it could." Mia stepped back, blinking fast, and I reached for her, pulling her into a hug that said more than I ever could. She had come so far. We all had. Later, at the reception, Rachel dropped a surprise of her own. She clinked her glass gently and stood with a beaming grin. "Before I give my toast, I just want to make a tiny announcement," she said, eyes dancing toward Ben, who already looked like he was about to cry. "We're expecting our second child." Cheers erupted. Nora whooped. Mia screamed. Ben laughed and wiped at his eyes like a man unprepared for that level of joy. Even Claire, standing near the back with a plate of cake and a look of genuine happiness, clapped along. And when I looked at her, something in her expression caught me off guard. It wasn't envy. It wasn't discomfort. It was peace. For once, she didn't try to redirect the attention. She just stood in the glow of someone else's happiness and let it be. It was a moment I never thought I'd witness, and it felt like a small, silent kind of miracle. The papers were signed in February. Dad called to let me know, his voice steady but quiet. "It's official," he said. "The divorce is finalized." There was no fanfare, no dramatic court scene, just a quiet end to a marriage that had unraveled long before the signatures. After nearly 4 decades, they had untied the knot that once held our family together, however imperfectly. "I feel relieved," he admitted, and guilty for feeling relieved. "You don't have to," I said. "You did what was necessary. I should have done it years ago, maybe. But he'd done it now. That counted for something." Claire moved into a small apartment near the community college. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers, and that mattered. She sent me a photo of the place plants on the windowsill, a half-finished jigsaw puzzle on the table, a framed sketch Mia had given her last Christmas. Her space, her pace, no spotlight. She also started part-time counseling work. Volunteering at first, then eventually picking up hours at a youth center near her building. She didn't brag about it, didn't post about it. I only knew because Mia mentioned it casually one day. "She's actually good with the kids," Mia said. "Patient, thoughtful, different. That word lingered. Because we were all different now. Family dinners started to feel normal, not performative, real, just us. Me, Nora, Rachel, Ben, Mia, and Dad gathered around mismatched plates and homemade food. Claire joined occasionally, but she never tried to dominate. She listened more than she spoke. She stayed late to help clean up. She asked about Mia's classes and actually remembered the answers the next time. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. Even Mom started to thaw. She didn't come to dinners, not yet, but she called Rachel one afternoon just to talk, just to ask if maybe they could meet for coffee. She sounded softer, Rachel said afterward, like someone who's tired of holding up a mask. We weren't rushing anything. Wounds like ours didn't close clean, but they stopped bleeding. They scarred. And scars mean healing, even if the memory lingers. Mia, in the middle of it all, was blooming. She came home with stories about critiques that turned into breakthroughs, about friends who loved her weird jokes and late-night ramen runs. She sent us photos of her latest projects, portraits made with thread, experimental collages of family photos reimagined in surreal, dreamy ways. One had all of us sitting at a dinner table made of clouds. No one was at the head. We were all equal, all present. I kept that one on my desk, because for the first time, that's how it felt. Not perfect, but present, chosen, earned. And after everything we'd been through, that was enough, more than enough. A year later, we hosted a graduation dinner for Mia. Not a party, not a spectacle, just a dinner. The kind where every dish was her favorite, where laughter didn't feel forced, and where no one had to pretend they were okay just to keep the peace. She was home for the summer, halfway through her second year of art school. Her hair was longer, her voice was stronger. She walked like someone who didn't apologize for taking up space anymore. The table was full me, Nora, Rachel, Ben, Dad, Claire, and even Mom. Yes, Mom. She arrived late, holding a bottle of wine she'd Googled the name of just to make sure it matched the meal. She didn't dominate the conversation. She didn't offer backhanded compliments. She just showed up, asked questions, listened, smiled. Claire sat beside her, quietly helping her navigate the unfamiliar terrain of a family she'd once tried so hard to control. Mia was radiant. She wore a dress she'd made herself, hand-stitched stars across the neckline, a constellation only she understood. She gave a toast, something simple and shy. I didn't think I'd ever feel this kind of peace around this table, but I do, and I'm grateful. We clinked glasses. We passed dishes. We told stories we'd all heard a dozen times before, but laughed anyway. After dessert, Mia pulled out a small canvas and placed it on the table. I made something, she said, a new piece. It was a painting. A dinner table set in the middle of a garden, chairs filled with versions of us at different ages. Kids, teens, adults, all sharing the same space. No one faded into the background. No one took center stage. It was balance. It was beautiful. I call it new framework, she said. Dad wiped his eyes. Mom reached out and touched the corner of the canvas with a trembling hand. I looked around the table and saw it clearly, the transformation. This wasn't a perfect family. It never would be. The scars were still there, some deeper than others, some still tender. But they no longer defined us. We had moved from survival to intention. We had chosen to rebuild, not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. And sitting at that table, watching Mia finally take up the space she'd always deserved, I realized something simple and powerful. Not built on obligation, but on truth. Not held together by denial, but by love that had been tested and proved itself again and again. This was our new framework. And we built it ourselves.